Okay, imagine for a second that for the first 100 years of a major world religion, millions of people were praying in the wrong direction. That's the absolutely explosive idea we're diving into today, the Petra Theory. And this isn't a story from ancient manuscripts. Nope, it's a story that's written in the very stones of the world's oldest mosques.
I mean, it's a question that sounds almost crazy, right? The direction of prayer towards Mecca is such a core part of Islam, a ritual performed by billions every single day. But what if the actual physical evidence, the stones themselves, suggest a totally different story for the first century of the faith?
So let's get into it. Our investigation starts with what you could call the Qibla puzzle. The clues here aren't buried in some secret code. They're literally the walls of the oldest mosques ever built. And, well, they seem to be telling us something completely unexpected. Okay, first things first, we need to be on the same page about one key term, Qibla. It's simply the direction a Muslim faces during prayer. And for more than 1,000 years, that direction has been locked in towards the Kaaba in Mecca. It's a fundamental, non-negotiable part of daily worship. And this is where the mystery really kicks into high gear. When archaeologists surveyed the ruins of the very first mosques, we're talking about buildings from before the year 725, they found something really strange. Their prayer walls, the Qiblas, they weren't pointing toward Mecca. They were all consistently pointing further north. So now you've got a major conflict. Do you trust the physical evidence from the time, or do you trust the historical accounts that were written down hundreds of years later?
So, if not Mecca, then where were they all pointing? The search for that answer leads us to a new and, a deeply controversial theory. It suggests that the original holy city wasn't in Saudi Arabia at all. It was in the incredible rock-carved city of Petra.
And this really gets down to a major clash of historical methods. See, traditional history leans on Islamic manuscripts, but those were all written down 2 or 3 centuries after the events they describe. But historian Dan Gibson comes along and argues, hey, maybe we should focus on the hard evidence, the actual archaeology from the period. And his big claim is that all of those early Qiblas, they all converge on one single place, Petra. The next piece of evidence, it honestly feels like something straight out of a detective novel. See, supporters of the Petra theory started digging around for other connections, and they found a huge one hiding in plain sight, the actual names used to describe the holy city.
And when you look at these parallels, it's kind of mind-blowing. Get this. Before Islam, Petra was called metropolis in Greek, which means mother of settlements. In the Quran, the holy city is called Qura, the Arabic for mother of settlements. The local name for the valley around Petra was Rakim. A place called Al-Rakim is mentioned in the Quran. Petra literally means the rock. The holy sanctuary is also called Al-Hijr, which also means the rock. It's just one uncanny connection after another. But maybe the most jaw-dropping piece of textual evidence doesn't even come from Islamic tradition. It comes from a 9th century Armenian historian, writing pretty close to the time of these events. And he makes a direct connection. He writes that a place in Arabia Petraea, that's the Roman province of Petra, is now called Makkah. You've got an external, non-religious source directly linking the region of Petra with a name that sounds, well, a lot like Makkah. Of course, you don't just throw out a theory this revolutionary and expect everyone to accept it. It didn't go unchallenged. And this brings us to the modern academic debate, where Gibson's theory was put to the ultimate test, a serious statistical showdown. So the debate really comes down to 2 main figures. In one corner, you've got Dan Gibson, championing the Petra theory based on how these mosques are physically built. And in the other corner, you have historian David King, who defends the traditional view of Mecca. Now, King argues that early Muslims might have just used different methods to find their prayer direction, maybe using the stars. And he points to centuries of manuscript evidence that all say again and again that Mecca is the holy city. And this is where the story takes a really fascinating twist. Some researchers ran a statistical analysis testing both theories against the raw data from all these early mosques. The results? They were stunning. For that earliest period, before 725, the data fits the Petra theory really, really well. Then, you jump ahead to mosques built after the year 900, and the alignment clearly points to Mecca. And that messy period in between? It looks like a gradual, century-long transition was actually happening. So, what are we supposed to make of all this? Well, it doesn't leave us with a simple answer. It leaves us with an unsolved history.
We're looking at two compelling but contradictory sets of evidence, and it just forces us to ask what it all means. Let's just lay out the puzzle pieces one last time. You've got the stones of the first mosques that don't seem to point to Mecca. You've got the Petra Theory, backed by those linguistic clues and external accounts. Then you've got the traditional view of Mecca, which perfectly matches all the later mosques. And finally, you have statistics suggesting this shift happened over time. It all boils down to one huge question. Do you trust the archaeology from the first century or the manuscripts that were written down centuries later? The big takeaway here is that the stones themselves are asking us to rethink a story we all thought was settled. This physical evidence presents a puzzle that reminds us that history is never really a closed book. It's always a live investigation. And it leaves us with one final, pretty provocative thought. What other secrets are hiding in history's oldest buildings, just waiting to be discovered?